Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make Southern meatloaf, but today's meatloaf has a really scary, terrifying twist to it, so stay tuned to the very end for that recipe. Before we begin, we're going to go ahead and create the meatloaf seasoning. I'm making enough to have some to store as bulk meatloaf seasoning. So you can make your seasoning beforehand and have it ready to go. This saves time and money. So the recipe for this you will find in my description. You're going to add some onion powder, you're going to add some garlic powder, and you're going to add some paprika, some other seasonings as well. So this recipe really helps out because I used to buy the McCormick little seasoning packets for meatloaf, and they were getting pretty expensive. I think $2 a meatloaf seasoning packet. So like I say, this will really save time and money to make this beforehand and store it in a little mason jar. And then you just add about 2 tablespoons per meatloaf. So in today's video, I'm making about 1/4 cup, but the recipe is for making a whole cup of the meatloaf seasoning. You can adjust it to your measurements and whatever you need. I just needed some to keep in my pantry, and I have a small jar to do that, so I didn't want to make the whole cup. So this is what I'm making in this video, and then I'm going to actually use it to make the meatloaf that we'll be making today. This seasoning is for Southern meatloaf. So you're also going to use some cumin, and some of these things just kind of bring warmth to the meatloaf, and so it's up to you whether or not you want to add that in. Like the cayenne pepper, it actually doesn't really make the meatloaf spicy at all. It just brings a certain level of warmth and depth to the flavor. So you're just going to mix all of these things together like parsley, and you're going to use some thyme, and then you're just going to mix everything here and find yourself a nice jar, or if you just want to keep it like in a Ziploc bag or something, that will do as well, and just label it meatloaf seasoning. So you're going to use some thyme. One of the things that I didn't have on hand is dry mustard, and if you don't have dry mustard, that's okay. When you make your meatloaf, you can just put in a little bit of, your regular old mustard that you have in the fridge. So you're also going to add in some light brown sugar or brown sugar, whatever you have on hand. This gives it also a little bit of sweetness. You really don't taste a whole lot of that, like the sweet or the spicy or anything. It just creates a really good flavor when it mixes in with everything else in your meatloaf. So let me know down below, do you buy your own meatloaf seasoning? Do you create your own meatloaf seasoning? This is just a Southern meatloaf seasoning. If you like to make it a different way, comment down below how you make yours. I would love to hear from you in the comments section. So it's almost Halloween here, and I think we have like another week until Halloween. So I'm making a spooky kind of scary recipe that I make every year, and the way that I make it is that I use meatloaf. And so this is really a really spooky kind of recipe because it really does look pretty scary. So I know that my daughter thinks it's pretty gross, and I mean, she'll eat it, but it looks really bad, but it really is just a Southern meatloaf. So I'm putting everything into this little jar, and this is where I'm going to store my meatloaf seasoning. And like I say, when I go to make one, all I have to do is just measure out 2 tablespoons. And I had some left over for today's meatloaf, so I have that still in the bowl that we made it in. So let's go ahead and get started making our foot loaf. So that is what we're making today. We're making a foot loaf. I'm using some ground pork, and I'm using some ground beef. As you can see, my ground beef is the reduced for sale for Walmart, and it was for $5.05 a pound. Ground meat is getting really expensive lately, and so anytime I see it on sale, I pick it up. But even $5.05 seemed pretty high to me, but our ground meat where we live is almost at $7 a pound. So I mix it in with some ground some ground pork, and it also gives it really good flavor, but it also saves some money as well because the ground pork is a little bit cheaper than the ground beef. So I'm making about 2 pounds here of the meat and the ground meat and the ground pork together. Now I'm going to add in my milk. And again, just a reminder, you can find the full recipe with description on how to make this, the ingredients, and all of that in my description. So go check that out for the full recipe. So I'm just kind of mixing things in slowly. I actually cut my finger a little while ago, and so I usually get in there with my hands and mix everything together, just kind of dump everything and mix it. But I'm going kind of a little slower, just kind of mixing it in with my spoon. And then I'll probably have to use my hands anyway, because today's recipe calls for kind of molding and creating almost like Play-Doh a foot. So I'm adding in my eggs now, and so I'm adding everything in step by step. I used to use the hand mixer to mix everything together, and that really helps out a lot, but I think I was just too lazy to go find that and get it out. You can also use a stand mixer or anything like that and put your ingredients in there and just mix them, and it really makes a really uniform kind of meatloaf. So I do like doing that, but today I'm just kind of mixing everything step by step with my spoon, and eventually I'm going to have to use my hands. So I put in some ketchup into my meatloaf. I know that everybody puts some on the very top, but I put some also into the meatloaf. I don't know if any of y'all do that as well, but that's something that we like to do. So now here comes in our meatloaf seasoning. As you can see, I had some left over in the bowl. It's about 2 tablespoons worth of the meatloaf seasoning. It's really going to create a really good taste. And so this is your Southern meatloaf. I live in Texas, and there's different seasonings and ways to make your meatloaf. But this one is the Southern. As you can see, I put in some cayenne pepper. I put in, quite a bit of paprika and some cumin, which is a little different than maybe some of the other meatloaf seasonings. I'm putting in half of an onion and mixing that in. I didn't realize my chunks were so big, but it should be okay. You want to kind of finely chop them. For some reason I thought I had, but I hadn't. So it's going to be okay. They're going to get cooked in there, and it's going to create some good flavor, so it's still going to be pretty good. From time to time, I like to leave out the onions though, because they do create a pretty strong flavor. But if you like onions, go ahead and put some in. You're going to put some Worcestershire sauce in there and just kind of spray some in there. You can check out my recipe if you want an exact measurement. But I've been making this meatloaf pretty much every week for a long time. So this is something that I'm really used to making here. Now we're going to put in our breadcrumbs. These are some seasoned breadcrumbs that I had, and then I also had some like leftover Ritz crackers. So if you have like crackers left over, you might open up a Ritz cracker tube and you don't finish it all. That's what happened to me. Just go ahead and crush the Ritz crackers up and add them to your breadcrumb container, and or saltines or any kind of crackers that you have. If you don't have breadcrumbs at all on hand or crackers, you can use actual bread. So just keep that in mind that you can use bread, but one good way to use up your crackers before they go bad is just make sure that you just kind of just break them up and put them in with your breadcrumbs. And next time you make a meatloaf, you can use those up. The Ritz crackers give it a really good taste as well. So I'm just kind of mixing everything in here. While you're doing this, you're going to want to set your oven to 350 degrees. And you're going to get yourself a pan that's big enough for you to mold the foot loaf if you're making the foot loaf. So I'm going to go ahead and start molding it. We have all of the ingredients mixed together. So now it's time to make the foot loaf. Think about what a big foot would look like and just go ahead and start molding it and building it to that shape. If you needed an example, go check out my thumbnail where I posted a picture of the foot loaf that I completed. But you're just going to go ahead and create what would be like a big foot. And then you got to work on the toes and make sure that everything is kind of sticking together. Another fun thing you can do is you chop an onion like this, where it's like cut in half and it's like the circle side. And you're just going to put that in the end where the bone would be to connect to your leg. So it looks like it's a bone. Okay, so go ahead and do that. My foot loaf is sort of coming together. just add in a little bit here and there and just mold it so that it looks realistic and it looks good. And it's also good shape for baking as well. You sort of want to keep still kind of an even sort of sizing and everything of your meatloaf so that everything cooks evenly. So now I'm working on the toes. You're going to start with your big toe, and then you're going to do your other toes. If your kids want to get involved in making this, it's a good recipe to get them involved as well in cooking and making something pretty cool. Otherwise, if you're going to surprise them, just go ahead and make it, and they'll be surprised when they see this come out for dinner. So I've been making this foot loaf for a while now. There's actually a recipe here on our channel where I share the meatloaf. I'll try to link that down below in the comment section as well. That recipe did use the McCormick seasoning, which makes a really good meatloaf as well. So even though today's meatloaf seasoning saves a lot of time and money, the McCormick's, if you don't have time to make the seasoning, is a great seasoning to use for your meatloaf, and it is really tasty. It's also really simple to follow because it has the instructions right there on the back. So whatever you want to do. So now that we have the toes pretty much molded together, what you're going to do is you're going to get some of the onion. So I peeled off like a layer of the onion that we put in for the bone. And with that onion, you're going to create the nails for your toes. So like the toenails. And so you can either cut them out with scissors. I've done that before. You can cut them out with a knife, or you can just kind of wing it like I'm going to do. I'm just going to actually just kind of peel some off with my fingers and just kind of mold them in. They should look fine. This is very forgiving and easy to make. So that's kind of what gives it another realistic touch is the toenails, because they actually look like toenails when you use this onion. It really ends up looking that way. So this is what it looks like so far. If you have any other ideas of things to add, how to make it more realistic or anything like that, go ahead and make it your own. So this onion actually does cook up, and you can actually eat it. The toes actually end up tasting or being more like meatballs. So if your children like meatballs, give them the toes. And so that's the part that I like to eat. If you have the meatloaf seasoning that you've made in bulk, just keep in mind that you can make meatballs and all of that with that seasoning as well. It's not just for meatloaf. Lately, we've been on a spaghetti kick, and I think almost every week we've been doing spaghetti. Sometimes we do it with meat sauce, sometimes we do it with meatballs. So keep in mind that you can use that seasoning to make your meatballs. Just like you did for the meatloaf, you would make that for the meatballs. All right, so that is what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my hands are nice and clean, and I'm going to go ahead and the next thing we're going to do is just finish this off with some ketchup. The ketchup is going to look like blood. So use your imagination how you want to drip the ketchup on the foot. I'm going around the edge of the bone as if, the bone was severed and the blood came out from that area. So adding some of this blood really makes it kind of cool. I'm just going to add some there. And so because of that, I'm not going to add ketchup on the whole meatloaf. When you go to serve it, if people like to have, some ketchup with their meatloaf, I would just put some on the side. But to make this foot loaf really scary and realistic, I'm just putting the blood around the bone area. And this is what it looks like before it is baked. And we're going to bake this in the oven like any old meatloaf at 350 degrees for an hour. And this is what it ends up looking like when you take it out of the oven. It's pretty scary and ugly looking, and your kids will really enjoy this for Halloween. So I encourage you to do this this Halloween as a spooky, scary Halloween recipe. Thank you for tuning in today. I will catch you on our next video.